Hello, hello. Good morning, guys. I see a few people trickling in. I'm gonna wait until another minute till the top of the hour, and then we'll get this started. Thank you all for joining early. All right. Hello, everybody. Good morning, and let's get started. Thank you for joining us. I see a few more people trickling in, but we'll get the webinar started. It's top of the hour. It's our go time. So again, thank you everybody for joining us, taking the time out of your busy schedule. It's a Friday, I know, but still, it probably has been a busy week as it has been for us here at GXC. And really, again, very grateful that you guys have decided to spend some time with us today. Couple of housekeeping items just before we get started. If there are any questions, please use the Q&A box down there. We want to try and get to as many as we can, but the idea is we want to keep it keep for the major chunk of the webinar so that we can bring out all of the valuable points that we want to bring to our audience. And Q&A is perfect for a discussion towards the end of the session. So we'll pick up the questions from the Q&A tab, and my colleagues, couple of them, will join us here, and we'll have a discussion about GXC, about various other topics that you guys want to bring it to our attention. I forgot to introduce myself. Uh, so my name is Hitesh Solanki. I am with GXC. For those of you who've not met me yet, I am excited to meet you in the near future. For those who have already met me, thank you very much again, and a pleasure to sort of connect with you here in this webinar format. I have been with GXC for over 2 years now. I run product with the team here very closely with engineering as well as the sales and the marketing teams. It's a really small team, so we try to wear multiple hats and we try to get the best of each other out so that we can do a great job, and it shows in our products and our value proposition. So that's what we do here. That's what GXC is, and for the most part, I'm aware. I would imagine that people know what GXC is. But GXC was GenXCom, which got rebranded to GXC, I think, about a year and a half ago. And we we are in the business of building private cellular networks, private 5G, private cellular networks, various different terminologies out there. But in a nutshell, it's trying to create a network, a wireless network, using equipment that really feels and operates and with the simplicity of Wi-Fi, but it's actually transmitting cellular technologies. And our goal, our North Star at the company is how do we make it easier, simpler, faster for our customers to get their client devices connected to a wireless network so that their productivity doesn't get impaired, so that their security doesn't get, questioned, so that they're always in, they always have eyes and ears on things that they need to in their day-to-day operations. So our network, the simplicity of our network and one of the value propositions of our network is that it's robust, it is secure, and it is as if it doesn't exist. So that way you're always, you're not thinking about the network, you're thinking about what your day job is and what your day-to-day operations are and how to make them more efficient and how to, push forward with them. So that's a little bit on that. Bringing it down to the webinar, the way I've structured this is to have a brief introductory overview of our solution, of our architecture, and We'll start getting into the details of the features, what we just came out with, which we are really excited about, and the meat of the webinar will be about that, about the actual new release features that we brought in, which are predominantly focused on making our solution secure. So we'll talk about that. And towards the end, like I mentioned earlier, we'll have some Q&A opened up through the Q&A box on the Zoom webinar. And we'll have a colleague of mine and our co-founder join us, and we'll have a discussion and try to address as many as we can. So yeah, and then one more thing before we begin. I know there's a lot going on in the world these days. There's all kinds of weird things happening. We at GXC are all in for the world peace and for things to not get out of hand already from where they are already, and to kind of get back to normalcy. So it's hard, but we as professionals, all of us, really genuinely believe that we can, with more empathy and with more consideration for each other, can actually make our professional lives at least much better than what it could be otherwise. So if if there's any help that I can do personally, or we as a company can help you with, when it comes to connectivity, when it comes to being able to bridge gaps and being able to bring internet to areas that you think can make a difference, we're all here to listen to all that. So let me get started with my webinar slides here. So I'm going to make myself a little bit smaller on the screen so you guys can have a better view of the actual webinar. There we go. So back to GXC as a platform. So Onyx is the name of our overall solution. GXC is the name of the company. Onyx Private Networks is how we call our actual end-to-end solution, right? So we have, as I mentioned, access points. We have them connected to a on-prem edge gateway, and we have a cloud-hosted portal that manages the equipment on the ground. The key highlight on this slide are basically, it's a very simple solution. We always try to make it as simple and as viable as Wi-Fi. So, and Wi-Fi is a benchmark for simplicity, but I'm looking at the chat over here. Apparently, there's a slide issue. Is slide coming across okay? Can I get a maybe a
Yes, we can see the Onyx Private Network platform slide.
Perfect. All right. So as I was saying, it's a very simple solution, and that's by design. That's the goal, right? Like, we don't want, as I mentioned earlier, for our customers or whoever is using Onyx to be thinking about how do I figure out how to manage this. I used to work for a company before in my past life, and we actually had to create training sessions and we used to hand out certificates that now you know how to use our software. And I had a big heartburn with that philosophy, because if you have to teach your customers how to use your product so that they can then get value out of it, I think we lost a few battles already by that time. So by design, Onyx is made extremely simple to operate. There are complicated terminologies that are out there, legacy out of the remnants of the telco world, the radio access network and the core network, and all of that basically simplifies down to a one rack unit server that sits on your premise and access points, and they have Ethernet cables or Cat5 cables going between them. If you can imagine a network that is as simple as that can deliver 4G and 5G signals, even despite being in that form factor, it's a game changer, right? I'm going to talk about mesh towards the end, but I want to highlight the other two ones that I'm putting on the slide. The enterprise integration readiness. What we mean by that is it's really truly a single pane of glass. And that term has been, again, abused a lot. But when somebody claims that they have a single pane of glass, my perspective is that I need not ever have to go to any other vendor platform or any other equipment management system or a network management system to be able to bring up my solution from 0 to 1, meaning I'm opening up boxes, I'm putting them together, I'm attaching them the way they're supposed to attach. And I just need one UI that lets me go through from not having a network to having a network and plopping a SIM and actually seeing that that SIM is consuming data. That's what we have with Onyx. It's a ground up network management system that we built from our team's expertise, using our team's expertise to essentially keep our North Star true, which is it's a simple solution. It's as easy as it gets. And you have other it's not on the slide, but I'll mention this here. If you have other existing software solutions on your network, it's an IT enterprise, it's something that you have for if it's something that you have for your firewalls, if there's some software that you've used for your secure access, secure edge applications, if there are any specific software security related applications that you have on already, our solution is a ground up API based solution that can integrate with any of those, right? Now, what I mean by that is you don't have to create or go buy a wrapper for specific integrations that you have in mind. If you have any concerns about creating a private cellular network that will be an island of its own, and how do I get the connectivity or get the same security profile that I have for my wired or for my Wi-Fi onto that, it's a non-issue for us or with us, because like I mentioned, we've designed Onyx platform from the ground up, imagining that that will be the case. We will not be a greenfield only deployment, and we want to make sure that we are easy enough and robust enough to integrate with whatever security infrastructure that you have. And that's basically available as of today. That was the third pillar right there. Now about the mesh node, as I mentioned earlier, that is something very unique that we bring to the table that doesn't exist anywhere else. Now the mesh nodes are specifically designed to bring coverage where it's hard to get coverage. And I'll paint a picture or two about it in the next slide. But think about it as if you could bring, what if you could bring private cellular network where you only have or you barely have access to electricity to power up something. And in certain cases that we've deployed, we don't even have electricity. So we've used batteries and solar panels to bring up a mesh node. It's a really cool device. More about that in the next slide. This one. So again, very high level overview of what the network architecture looks like. And I've got a couple more that will take us through different aspects of it. But this specific one over here is basically talking about what our on-prem architecture, or what our architecture when you have an on-prem device looks like. So just walking through very briefly, and on the right-hand side, you've got the end user devices that are CBRS capable. CBRS is the band in which we operate within the US. So it's band 48. You've got end user devices on the right-hand side of the screen. The mesh node also is a client from a network architecture perspective for us. And if I get out of the screen, you will see that we've got a CBRS link between our access points to the mesh node, as well as an access points to any of the end user devices, as I'm showing here, right? And in turn, that access point is connected. The top portion is talking about an indoor access point. The bottom portion is showing the outdoor access point. Bringing it back towards one more step to the left, excuse me, we've got the Ethernet cable connection or the Cat5 cable connection that goes into the outdoor or the indoor access point that you have, which is plugged into this really cool one rack unit server, which we call Onyx Edge server. An Onyx Edge server is a compute. It's a really robust compute and storage platform that we've created, or that we've modified slightly bit so that it can function or it can serve the function of being that gateway or that edge anchor point for the entire network. And the beauty of that is, because of that device, any traffic that is going east-west, meaning going within the devices, between the indoor AP to the outdoor AP or within the devices that I'm showing here, that traffic doesn't essentially have to leave your premise at all. It stays on your premise, it stays on your location, and it's, at that point, a completely secure closed loop sort of data path for your stuff, for your information. What does go out of this box to the internet is any internet bound traffic, so north-south traffic from your location to the open internet. What also goes is any management traffic, and those are two separate paths. We make sure that your data is encapsulated end to end, and it doesn't essentially even enter our cloud, so to speak, right? Because this is a 3GPP specifications based architecture, the SIM cards that go into these devices, and maybe I didn't mention that, but these devices get connected to the access point using either LTE or 5G protocol. So they are SIM based, and from the get-go, they have a complete tunnel, an encapsulation, an encryption that goes for the data that goes from the device into the access point through the Cat5 cable, through the Onyx box, and out into the open internet system. Even we don't have the capability to tap into that information. It's governed and defined by the 3GPP specifications. And then a little bit on the left-hand side about the orchestrator, as well as there's obviously cloud components into it. We have portion of the 3GPP core sitting on the edge premise, the Onyx Edge server, and then there's a portion of it that sits in the cloud, which is a multi-tenant, highly secure, orchestrated environment. And that's the pathway for your data that is going to get out of the cloud and go into the open internet. And that's where the Onyx's value proposition comes in. You can have a very simple one rack unit server that sits on-prem that can manage all of your deployments. And you have a cloud component that is scalable, is highly secure as well. And we'll talk a little bit about the security aspects in even more detail, but I want to give you guys a consistent theme of how the whole network from end to end is A, single pane of glass, B, very secure, and C, it's diverse. Like if you see the amount and the number of devices that we can connect, especially because we have a mesh node, you can take the mesh node and put it out at the cell edge of your outdoor access point that I'm pointing to over here. And now you got about a mile more out of your coverage. So your mesh node is actually acting as an extender, as a network propagator at the edge of the cell where you've deployed your actual outdoor AP, or we could do it with indoor as well, but outdoor is usually the best case in terms of value for that investment. And you get another mile of coverage. And if your mesh node doesn't have Ethernet, it's wireless backhaul into the mesh node. So if you don't have, you would do this when you don't have Ethernet cable capabilities. And like I mentioned earlier, if you don't even have power, that's fine too, because the mesh node is small enough and is capable enough to be powered using some batteries and a couple of solar panels in the middle of a field. So I think that is a game changer when it comes to certain hard to reach areas for connectivity and wireless connections. Moving on to the next slide. This is where we start getting into the meat of the matter with different types of opportunities for integration and security tunnels that we can establish, right? This one was done for a specific customer that had very specific requirements to make sure that packets don't crisscross boundaries. They needed specific APN-based tunnels to go between their devices and their corporate network. Give me 1 second. So as this diagram indicates that not only the packets and the tunnels were isolated, but their priorities were also we were also able to change their priorities. LTE as well as 3GPP in general has this notion of quality of service, QCI values, if you guys are familiar with that. It allows you to map specific APNs to specific QCI values and quality of service, which guarantees a bit rate on your devices. So creating multiple VLANs, parsing the traffic, or tagging the traffic with those VLAN IDs all throughout the network, so that your traffic gets tunneled or gets piped into a specific tunnel that is all across, ubiquitous all across your IT infrastructure. That to an IT manager is golden, right? Like now there is no need for them to manage private networks traffic separately from a wired network traffic from a Wi-Fi traffic. If there are VLAN 20, for example, to get into corporate networks, as it's shown here, across the board, it'll be VLAN 20, and it doesn't matter if the traffic is coming from a GXC Onyx private network, or if it is coming from another device that's connected to a wired Ethernet port or anywhere else. So it's APN driven. It's a derivation of 3GPP, and we've taken things that really are impactful and helpful from the 3GPP specification to make this a very enterprise friendly, enterprise centric product. Moving on to the next one. This is a little bit about our architecture. I'm going to make myself smaller here. Maybe plot myself here. This is a slide that is depicting the previous architecture, but we only to highlight that we also have a completely cloud-hosted core solution. So that that edge device that I was showing here, if you, for some reason, and whatever that could be, we've been there once in a while, that our customers don't want or don't essentially need or don't have a place to host a server. And in that case, we do have the offering of everything that sits in the cloud. So the entire edge compute and functionality is ported over into the cloud. And with what that actually does also mean is that all of your data is now going to go through the cloud. So when that happens, we ensure that it's not sent over the open internet into the cloud, right? We want to make sure that it's secured. And so there is IPsec tunneling that happens from the actual access point to the cloud, to the core network. So your S1 AP, as well as all of the traffic that is encapsulated in there, does have an extra layer of IPsec, which is another word for a VPN tunnel, if you're familiar with that terminology. So it's a VPN tunnel between the access point to the cloud, and make sure, and that becomes ironclad again, like your data stays secure with us. Moving to the next slide here. So now we are starting to get into our new release and the functions and the features that we've come out with. And I want to focus on three things for this one. The first one we're going to talk about is the analytics. Then we'll talk about a specific feature called the SIM locking feature. And after that, I want to address one more aspect of it, which is well, actually, let me keep those things for the later as they come in. I want to address the dashboard here and what it's talking about. So like I said, the three value propositions are for our solution are that it's a single pane of glass. You have the ability to manage the access points, which is another word for calling radio access network, the radios, the access points. You have the same software that manages your actual core engine or the core element of your network, Evolved Packet Core or 5G NGC, whatever you want to call it, that sits in the cloud or on the on-prem. And you have the same single pane of glass or the same NMS managing your actual SIM cards as well as SIM subscribers. And the feature that I was talking about from a security perspective comes in right alongside that, which is the SIM locking feature, right? And for those of you who are familiar with CBRS, you would probably also know or be aware that SAS, the Spectrum Access Service, is a big component of being able to use the CBRS band in the US. And so we front end that as well for you. You do not have to go seek separate SaaS subscriptions and manage your access point on the SaaS portal and do all of that stuff. Like, you come to GXC, we work with you to make sure that we become your one-stop shop for 0 to 1 in terms of your private cellular networks, right? The dashboard is a sneak peek for those that were not familiar that we had this dashboard about a year and a half ago. We put in a lot of thought and effort into making a very composite, consolidated dashboard that gives you the top level signals when you need them and as you need them when you log on to the system. But you don't have to worry about them. But you don't have to, you basically don't lose the forest for the trees is the idea with the dashboard, right? Now diving deeper into this particular release and the specific features related to security. So let me give you guys a moment here to kind of just absorb this slide, right? What are we talking here? We're basically talking about the attributes of how a 3GPP based private cellular network comes about and how efficiently the security element of that entire end-to-end network is realized. So though the people attending and that are familiar with the terminologies that have been in the cellular world, for example, would probably already appreciate and understand what this slide is trying to convey. To make it a little bit easier on those that are not familiar, what we are trying to say is, imagine if you consider the end user devices on the right hand side as your endpoint, and you consider the Onyx portal as your other end of the pipeline, if you will, because it looks like a pipe, right? There are tried and tested elements along that path which we haven't invented or created, right? Like, it's not secure because I'm telling you on this webinar that it's secure. It's not secure because GXC claims that they've created something that is ironclad and secure. It's secure because we've carefully picked up methodologies and techniques, patented techniques that have been absorbed into various standards around the world for decades to make the entire end-to-end solution secure, right? AES ciphering, TLS tunneling, NAS security. These are concepts that have white papers written about them for decades and that have been absorbed in the original legacy telco industry for many, many years. But to bring them from that level to a simple enterprise consumable level, that's where our value add is. Like, we've made sure that our solution doesn't ignore those specific security requirements or doesn't brush away those security requirements. We make sure that we put in that extra effort to import or to create our solution so that it can actually apply the same standards that are shown over here. And so IMSI verification, for example, IMSI to IMEI verification is very simple, but what it actually translates to is, if your SIM card was dropped, was stolen, was handed over to a disgruntled employee or what have you, you have the ability to block that. And that's something that you can do because this is a private network. That's not something that you could do if this was a public network. And more about that in a slide after. But this is the holistic view of what the latest release that we came up with, which is called 1.3, 1.3 and 1.3.1. That was a patch that was released right after it. Empowers the Onyx platform to claim that it's an ironclad secure platform for any of your private security needs, right? It's a bit technical, and if there are any questions about this, we'll go into the details of that. But in the interest of time, I'm gonna show you guys a couple more slides that reflect on the other security aspects of our solution. So, multi-factor authentication, the simplest use, or you've seen this kind of ramp up in the United States in the last, I think, 5 years or so, that every portal that you now log into needs you to have a multi-factor authentication enabled. And it's another signal of how quickly we want to adapt to the global trends in the security area are, right? Multi-factor authentication allows you to actually significantly strengthen your security profile by requiring not just a username and a password, but an additional code that if somebody were to copy your username and password, or if you got hacked on your solution, you could use this, or this would protect you from having unauthorized access and disabling your networks. That, by the way, are helping or are facilitating some really productive use cases in case if you were in a warehouse situation, if your robotics was actually relying on the private network to function, and if that were to go down, imagine the kind of chaos that would cause, right? um, it also, MFA actually has, over the period of a few years now, become a part of your compliance on your as an organization. Like if you were to go get a SOC 2 type 1 type 2 compliance, or if you were to get CSA compliance or CES type of compliance, these would make sure that you actually have everything you use on your premise providing a multi-factor authentication feature, because otherwise you won't be able to claim that certification. So as your partner, as your partner in defending your organization from a security standpoint, we make it our responsibility to do our best in supporting it, right? So that's multi-factor authentication. That is a brand new feature that not a whole lot of software portal providers today have. We've included that in our previous release, or the recent release that we're talking about. It's a simple user flow. We'll probably create a demo video for you if you want to know, but it's extremely intuitive and the instructions are pretty clear. You get a QR code when you try to log into your solution. The QR code makes sure you go ahead and download a Google Authenticator app. So it's like a VPN token that gets generated. So the next time when you try to log in, it'll ask you for username, it'll ask you for a password, and it'll ask you for a token that you got to provide onto the portal before you can get into the portal. And in case you've lost your Google Authenticator access, or your cell phone, or you don't have it with you, then there are certain static codes that you can also use, and that'll get you in. But the whole idea is it's not just a username and password. There's another piece of an identity or another piece of authentication that you need to put in before you can get into the network, making the network access extremely secure. That's number one. The next one is the SIM locking feature that I was talking about. So imagine a situation where you have your SIM card stolen, or your device stolen, and somebody swapped out the SIM and put it into another device. Or you have an employee that was just fired, things didn't go well, and he or she wants to, camp onto the network and do something malicious. Sometimes people, make emotional decisions. No judgment there. Uh, this screen is a snapshot of how easy it is to actually secure you from not getting into those type of situations, or secure your network from being vulnerable to that type of situations. If you wanted to, and again, this is an optional feature, not all subscribers that get configured on the platform will have this enabled by default. But if you desired to map a SIM card to a physical UE, or a phone or a tablet or what have you, you can enable this button, IMEI verification, and add in the IMEI ID, which is International Mobile Equipment Identity. It's a big acronym for a bunch of numbers. It's a 15-digit code that every handset, every phone, every tablet, like I mentioned, every camera, anything that uses a SIM card will have. So you can actually plop that in there, save it. And once you do that, if that SIM card were to then get out of that device and go into another device and try to power up or try to connect to the network, then it won't get through, because that number, when that new phone tries to send a request to connect to the network, to the private network, it sends a request to connect message. In that message, it uses the IMEI and the IMSI combination to get registered. And if that doesn't match because of the previous screen, if this number and the SIM number for this SIM card don't match, then that request will not go through, and you will see this this alarm on the dashboard to say that it's not matching. There's a problem with the configured device, and then you can deal with that at your own pace. The third thing that I want to talk about today is our analytics section. This is another one that I want to emphasize from both security as well as operational efficiency perspective. It wasn't always there on the platform, but this release that we worked on very hard in the last 6 months, the 1.3 release, gives you the ability to create a complete summary report for what has been going on in your network for the last 24 hours, for a changing or a switchable size of time frame. You could do it for a week, you could do it for 24 hours, you could do it for a few hours. And you can also granularly select what portion of your network, or if you wanted to do it for the full network, that's an option. But if you want to do it for a specific portion of the network, you can select the granularity that you want on the top filter here, and it'll give you a thorough analysis of what is going on in a report format, or you can do the same on the plot format. A very important use case for either or, plot or report, is if you see something out of the ordinary on your in your performance of your equipment or your clients that are connected to this network. This is your way to identify where it started, when it started, what potentially could have caused it. So it's an analytics for the network, but the purpose, the real value for it, is to help you debug or gauge or even quantify how well is your network serving you. What I mentioned was a reactive methodology. You could also look at this and go, okay, my access points in this particular area seem to be occupied at capacity for the most part all the time. Maybe I need to think about adding an access point there and making that section of the network a little less congested. And that's, again, as we know, is as simple as just dragging an Ethernet cable and plopping another device in there. And in case of a mesh node, you could do that even without that. So analytics in general gives you eyes and ears. There's an old adage in the Valley that I love, because it basically highlights what we do with this one. What doesn't get monitored cannot get managed, right? If you don't know what is going on, if you cannot put eyes and ears onto your network to see how your because the analytics here are essentially reflecting what the end client devices interacting with the access points are experiencing. If you know what that is looking like, or if you're aware of what that scenario is, then you can pull that information into your intelligence room and into your NOC and say, how do we address this? Do we need to do something proactively to make this better? And I know I'm at time, or in fact, even more than my time. But I want to just give one last thing, which is a coming soon slide. No webinar is complete without that, to give you a hook to kind of come back and talk to us again. If you've liked what you've seen so far, if you worked with us in the past and you want to know more, or if you're a brand new customer that is watching us for the first time, we are trying to make it extremely easy to have you get your hands on the GXC Private Networks. Our website doesn't have this yet, but it'll be there pretty soon, I promise. We are actually coming out with 2 separate kits that you can buy today with minimal investment, and have yourself a private network experience. It comes with everything that you need. The starter kit is basically, as it shows over here, it comes with an access point, a server, a smaller form factor server, SIM cards, as well as cabling that you would need to power them up and connect them. And you could use this on a lab bench. You could use this to validate with your colleagues. You could, use cases are abundant for that. When it comes to the 1-year subscription, so you can play with it. And on the right-hand side, it's the same stuff, but it's neatly packaged into a nice tucked away Pelican case. So the beauty of that one is no assembly required. You plop the hood up and you power up the button and it'll start transmitting LTE network. Both these kits do not come with a backhaul connection, obviously. That's something that we would rely on the customers to provide. It could be an Ethernet Cat5 cable, or any other methodology that you guys can think of that can actually provide the internet connection for the backhaul so that it can be then converted into cellular wireless on the front haul using one of these kits. So watch our website space. We'll also, because we have your email addresses that you've registered with, send you a notification when we launch this product. And we will, be able to send it your way. And so with that, I want to pause here and see what kind of questions we've got. And I can have Hardik join me, and Hardik is our co-founder. Hey, Hardik, good to see you.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Hitesh. Hitesh, maybe I can ask you a question on some of our attendees' behalf. The first one being, is it possible for us to change APNs for devices without actually making the configuration in the UEs, and then like maybe able to move them between different subnets? Maybe either you or Edgar could answer that.
So I'll take a stab, and Edgar, if you're on with us, maybe you can augment as well. If I understand the question correctly, changing the APN on the physical device without touching the actual UE and move the assets between subnets. My first impressions on that question seems like it'll be hard to change something that's on the device itself, because what's on the device technically is on the SIM card that we would provision and send ahead. If you wanted to change the properties of the SIM card that are or the subnets or the baud rates and things like that on the SIM, I believe that we should be able to do using our portal. But to change something that's other than that written on the actual device itself, because we don't manage the device, that's something that we don't do yet. That would be hard pressed to achieve, I would imagine. Edgar, your thoughts?
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Hitesh. Thanks, Hardik. Hello, everyone. Yeah, the one of the main feedback that I get from customers that have already been testing our platform is that how simple and easy it is to make changes to UEs, right? And how you allocate, you can map specific devices to a specific subnets, specific networks, internal networks within the enterprise in order to make sure that there is that traffic separation and a specific quality controls and priority policies applied to that specific traffic. And that's mapped directly to the function of the use case in the internal network. Meaning could be a device that is connected to the corporate network and devices that are connected exclusively to the IoT lab network and gas devices and so on, that will have different priorities on the enterprise, right? And this can be easily allocated on the device at the portal level, and you can make this change from one device to go into the corporate network, into that APN, right? That's mapped to a specific VLAN, and hence maintaining that traffic separation and that isolation and the security aspects that exposes those UE devices directly to the network. And in order to also those be applied, be subject to internal access control policies, security controls of the network. But just like you can allocate these devices and map them to an APN from one function, you can easily change within the portal the APN that's being allocated. Not only that, you can also allocate multiple APNs to a specific UE device if that's desired, in order to for this UE device to also have a specific mapping allocations. And that's the right slide I was going to ask you to come up to. And this is what I'm talking about. It's really simple to move an UE to another APN and have this UE exposed to the network, have an IP allocated directly from the DHCP servers of the internal network that match that specific network, and apply that that device, be subject to the access controls and security priorities and access lists on the network, so that you're always in control of that traffic, right? You always decide which device is connected to which network, and you're always in control. And you manage the data, you manage the control. We pass all that on to you. So the enterprise user always will have that part of the control of the traffic, with the simplicity of the features that offer on our portal. Hopefully that answers the question, but that's a big piece that I get feedback from customers, and they always appreciate that functionality.
So,
Thank you, Edgar.
Hardik, I'm
Thank you.
gonna try to
Mhm.
pick a question for you here. There's a few over there. Do we have a network graph node view that shows how these devices are connected to the G node B mesh node or each other, including the APNs and subnets?
Yeah, actually, this is something that we provide in our portal, where we have hyperlinks between each one of the elements. So like, for example, which UE is connected to what AP, which AP is connected to what core, and real easy navigation going back and forth between them is provided in the portal. We are working on, and in future releases, we will have like a full kind of like a graph node view coming out. We're working on it, and probably have it in the next few releases. That'll make it easy for a user to understand, especially in case of a complex network, help them understand what is connected to what.
Awesome.
But today we could achieve that using the hyperlinks that we have available in our
Right. I mean,
on
essentially, the
each
graph
device's
nodes and
page.
the links between them help you
Mhm.
navigate what's connected to what and how, which essentially is what you get on our portal. If you were to get into a network, a deployed network, and traverse through it, you'll be able to see it. In the near future, we should be able to adopt a graph node view as well. I don't see any other additional questions on here, and I think we are at time as well. In the interest of everybody's time that we had committed about 45 minutes, we are at 47. I would like to thank everybody for joining us and spending the time again this morning learning about GXC, Onyx, and the new release features that we brought into our solution. Like I mentioned, watch the space and reach out to know more about the kits if you're interested. We are super excited about launching them. And if my team if I did my job right, the team has promised me that that would be a Halloween gift for from GXC to everybody. So again, thank you everybody for spending the time together. Hope you guys have a great rest of the day and a great weekend ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.